All right. Welcome, everyone, to this November 12th, 2025 seminar. Did you hear that wink? Non-visual, non-verbal social interaction patterns from the audio game community. I'm here with Brandon Biggs, who's the from the Georgia Institute of Technology, PhD candidate and CEO of XR Navigation. Also an engineer at the Smith Kettlewell Eye Research Institute. And he has been working hard for the last couple of years developing human-centered tools tackling challenges the blindness field. So, Brandon, please take it away. I'm really excited today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dylan. All right, I'm going to share my screen. Are you seeing my screen?
Yep, I think we're hearing a little bit of your screen reader as well, but
Yeah,
shall
ignore
get going.
ignore the screen reader. I'm going to be sharing some spatial audio, and so there's no way for me to share my screen reader, my spatial audio without the screen reader. Um, so please bear with me on that. If people start commenting a lot, you might hear it, but I'll try to keep it as quiet as possible.
Yeah, no problem.
So you gave me a great introduction. This talk is based off a paper we just published in Virtual Worlds, the journal Virtual Worlds, and it really deals with probably some of the most complicated pieces of making virtual reality accessible, which is the non-verbal social interactions. And to be fair, in the real world, blind people have almost no access to non-verbal social interactions. So, uh, like this is going above and beyond what blind people have in the real world right now. So virtual reality basically is immersion, perception, and interaction with the real world. So immersion is the idea that when you're looking at a particular or you're in a particular world, you feel like you're there. And perception is the idea of the different senses, using the different senses, so visual, audio, touch, taste, that kind of thing, smell. And then interaction means that you can actually do something in that real world. So there are other definitions of virtual reality that are sensory specific, but this particular one is not sensory specific, and that's really important because VR was never intended to be a visual modality. It was intended to be multisensory from the get-go. So, what has been done with non-visual virtual reality in academia? Most of the work has been focused around like navigation. So there are things like VR canes. There have been a couple VR games that have been, created. Um, and in the tactile space in particular, there's been a couple tools out there like the haptics gloves that kind of give you some kind of air actuators on the fingers, uh, and then there are also the Phantom tool that's basically one finger that you're moving around and you can it'll do force feedback when you hit the different objects. But to be honest, tactile VR is still super, 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 super early, and really the best tools we've got are the vibrations for the totems that you can have with particular VR headsets. But I would consider that less than grayscale, and if we're comparing it to visual, like it's really, really minimal. For auditory VR, things have been a little more encouraging. We do have spatial audio in most VR environments, and a lot of like for example, there are ways to connect like the Web Audio API to the Web XR API for connecting the headsets and whatnot. And within auditory VR, there have been a lot of different tools, and I'll talk about them in just a sec, that have done some work, using audio in making information accessible. So for VR research in general with blind people, that kind of breaks into three categories: games, orientation, and social interactions. And there's been two papers around social interactions in VR for blind people that I was able to find. One of them is called VR Bubble, and basically that study had sounds and speech messages that indicated the distance people were away from the user. So, are you in whispering distance to me, like super, super close, or are you in kind of a friendship bubble distance, or are you in a, like if you're in like um, walking past somebody in the mall, like that distance. Then the other evaluation it was basically they looked at a couple different types of interactions, several different types of interactions, like nodding, shaking the head, and I think it was eye contact with you. And basically, they had sounds and vibrations that determined those particular indicated those particular sounds and asked blind participants their experience with those particular to have access to that particular information. And it was pretty interesting reading the blind participants' responses because normally when I'm talking to you, I have no idea if you're looking at me or not, and ignorance is bliss in many cases. And so it was really interesting to understand like the blind people's perception of like their audience when they knew that they weren't being looked at while they were talking. So it's kind of a really interesting social experiment that was being done during that study. But that's pretty much it when it comes to nonverbal, non-visual social interactions in VR. So there's still a long ways to go before we hit all the different social interactions. So, what I wanted to do for this project was look at audio games, which are games that can be played that have been built by and for blind people that are often completely non-visual. And audio games span the range from strategy games to first-person shooters where you're running around a post-apocalyptic world killing zombies, to like medieval knight, or wizard, where you're a medieval knight or wizard and you can run around, caves or tombs or whatever, and go on quests and whatnot. So they really span the spectrum of level of immersion in VR. And I would argue that, for a totally blind person, a an audio game that uses spatial audio is just as immersive as using a VR headset that uses spatial audio. So there is no difference for a totally blind person between a VR headset and an audio game that uses spatial audio, except maybe um, head tracking in some games is not supported. It isn't. It is supported in a few games, but not in most of them. Instead, what you'll do is you'll rotate your head around using the arrow keys or keyboard or some controller, and that's kind of how you move your head left and right. So that's basically what these games are. And if you would like to, listen and hear what it sounds like to run around a post-apocalyptic world and kill zombies, I recommend going and trying out Swamp. You can go to audiogames.net to hear and find a list of all the different types of audio games that are out there. But a lot of these do have non-verbal, non-visual social interactions, and so I'm going to talk about like what exactly they do. So first, what we did was we created an inventory of what are all the non-verbal social interactions that can be done in VR. Thankfully, we actually found a couple publications that had done that task, and then we basically aggregated them together and came up with an inventory of 29 unique areas of nonverbal social interactions that include things from interacting with the environment, movement, uh, facial control, full body movement, that kind of thing. So we're going to go through each of the top areas here in this inventory, and I'll delve into how the different audio games made these accessible. And so the study that we did as part of this paper was we found the top, we had a call for audio game developers who had released at least 5 audio games, and at least one of those audio games needed to, I think it was either 3 or 5, I can't remember, audio games, and just one of them needed to have a spatial audio experience. And so we ended up recruiting 5 different game developers, and all these games are commercially available, so you can go in on audiogames.net and play games by these developers. And so basically, that was our group, and we did what's called a Delphi method for creating these interactions. So we split the 29 interactions up into 5 different sections, and in the first round, we had participants uh, fill out what they thought would be the best interaction using audio game techniques for making those particular nonverbal social interactions accessible or usable for totally blind users. These were both sighted and blind developers, by the way, so they're not just blind. Um, but then the next round was we compiled all those different recommendations together into one inventory and then sent that out for review. And participants then gave their feedback on every single one of those areas and sent their feedback back to us. We compiled that and sent a third round out and asked for any additional comments. And after that third round, we compiled it and published the paper. So let's go through the different areas here and see what the recommendations were. So movement, which is basically, how do you get from point A to point B, uh, has needs to be done with blind people in a very tangible way. So right now, like I was saying, the tactile experience in VR is very minimal. A lot of interaction in VR is reaching out, in the air and trying to grasp things and do different gestures. That's okay, but blind people really dislike it because there's no physical feedback there. You're literally just waving your hands in the air. And I know some people really like to wave their hands in the air, but it doesn't really give you that immersion feeling. And so if you use a game controller or a keyboard, it's much more accurate, and that's definitely what was recommended during this particular inventory. And we go through a bunch of different types of movement that VR has, and the recommendations are, really what we want is indicators of when you're moving. So things like step sounds, and then when you hit an object, there needs to be some kind of collision sound to tell you that you're stopped. And then those movement stops sounds need to stop. And so that's really the most important aspect is like footstep sounds and collision sounds. And you'd be surprised on how many of those particular things are actually missing from VR experiences. I'm gonna play a demo of what it sounds like to actually move in a game, this post-apocalyptic world game that I've been talking about.
Current location is main lobby of safe zone. East. SE, south. Police station parking lot. Sandbag barricades. Police, sandbag barricades. Abandoned car. Abandoned car. Hospital rear parking lot.
So you can hear that as you're moving into different locations, it's telling you the name of that zone in speech, and then it's also changing different step sounds as you're moving over different surfaces, and then as you hit different objects, it'll give you a different collision sound, and then sometimes it'll tell you the object that you're hitting, like parked car or sandbag barricades. Another really important aspect for sighted people in VR is POV, or the point of view. But for blind people, it was pretty unanimous that this is not helpful. And so their recommendation was like, don't try and make the POV experience accessible, because audio is inherently first person. And so if you're trying to do a third person experience with audio, it's kind of very meta and super confusing. They did provide, the participants did provide a recommendation on how to do this if you really, really have a game that's super focused on that third person experience. But the recommendation was try and make the game, usable in more of a first-person experience. Now, something like a strategy game, for example, might not necessarily be VR, but the concept of moving through and selecting different pieces. Say, for example, you're in a chess game, um, like you're going to be wanting to select the different chess pieces with a controller or something like that, rather than necessarily, I don't know, like looking down and pointing to the different pieces, for example. So, if you have that ability to use a controller to do the selection, that's what you want, rather than like looking down from above and pointing to different pieces to move them or whatnot. So the next one is facial control. And basically this is like, raising your eyebrows or smiling or any of these things, or, uh, you know, winking.
Brandon winked at you.
So the idea here was, if when you have a facial control element, you want to have some kind of sound associated with it, usually it's some kind of musical or what we call an ear con, that doesn't really have a meaning to it, because we don't really have a sound for wink, or we don't really have a sound for smile in the real world. These are not auditory experiences, and so what you need to do is create a sound that is going to represent that. So in that previous paper that I'd mentioned about, head turning or whatnot, they for nodding your head, they would be like doo 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 doo, that kind of thing, and that kind of gives you an idea of moving your head up and down. But the user is going to need to have an idea of what's happening there. You can't just play the sound and expect them to know what it is. And so that's why it's super important to couple it with speech messages, or have a like a menu where you can go through and learn all the different sounds that are in the particular that the user might be encountering. The next one is multi-avatar interactions. And again, like this can be super, super broad. And so and so text is really going to be your friend when it comes to understanding these different types of interactions. Of course, you can have, the very symbolic things, like if somebody high fives you or whatever, having that sound of, clapping would be really useful. But for other types of more complicated interactions, if there are like emotes or whatnot, then that's what you definitely want to create text experience, messages for. So I'm going to show you an example of what it sounds like to have a really diverse set of social interactions between two different characters.
Welcome to Materia Magica.
A peaceful field. Visible exits, N. A well is here, filled with cool water. Copo is here. Copo bonks you on the head for some reason. B. O. N. K. Space. Cap C. O. P. O. Enter.
Ethylene bonks you on the head for some reason. C. A. T. Space. N. A. P. Space. E. T. H. A. L. I. N. D.
Copo curls up in your lap for a quick cat nap. G. L. A. R. E. Space. Cap C. O. P. O.
Ethylene glares icily at you.
So you get the idea. And so basically, those are really, I guess, shortened interactions that the user can have. And in VR, you typically aren't typing out all the different socials. That was a multi-user domain or a text adventure MUD. And so those do have the most complicated nonverbal social interactions in the audio game world, just because it's very open and you can just do whatever you want. Like you can type whatever you want. So those are where I kind of say are have the most complex social interactions. If you do want to do something really complicated, I would look to those. And usually it's around, let's describe it in text. All right, the next one are gesture and posture, and these are things like waving or slouching, or some other type of body movement. And similarly, the way that you would represent that is through some kind of text or maybe the user is pointing at you or something like that, and you want to have some kind of musical sound or ear con to indicate that particular piece. Another aspect that's similar are avatar mannerisms, and these are things like shifting weight or scratching your head, and these need to be extremely unobtrusive. And what's really important is that they can be turned on and off. So I'm going to show you in a little bit a demo with some avatar mannerisms in it. But that was basically the recommendation here. And they could be, sounds, whether it's iconic sounds of, somebody crunching on potato chips, or, something else to indicate particular health indicators, or it could just be, you shifting your feet on the ground. But it needs to be super unobtrusive. Avatar appearance, which is, a fashion, is another area that we went through. And basically, this again comes down to text descriptions. So the best thing is to have a way for a person to look at somebody and get what they're wearing in some kind of speech. And the best way to do this, technically speaking, is to make sure that each object in the game or in the VR world has some kind of name associated with it. So like don't just put a mesh there and say like this is a like object 01445 and just have the ID of the object. Like it should actually have a thing a name to it, like guitar, or something like that. That makes life a whole lot easier when trying to generate these descriptions. And so I'm going to show you what it's like to kind of select different objects and dress using some of these audio games.
Oh, you look exhausted.
Joe's equipment sheet. Canvas pants in leg slot. Iron dagger in main hand slot. Off hand slot. Amulet slot. Ring 1 slot. Equip Joe's ring 1. Initiates ring of warding 2 of 2. Initiates ring of shielding 1 of 2. Equip Joe's ring 1. Joe's equipment sheet. Initiates ring of shielding in ring 1 slot.
And this is a game called A Hero's Call, and it's one of the most advanced games out there when it comes to like immersion and VR. It's single player, but it's really good if you want to try one, and it's free. So I would definitely recommend it. It's called A Hero's Call. All right, so avatar environment interactions are also really important because somebody could be, shaking a stick at somebody else and or hitting, I don't know, hitting some kind of tree and having that fall on somebody else. So it does become a social interaction to some extent. And so the way to do this is basically really short sounds, and it could be in spatial audio or not, and then some kind of text description to say what's happening there. And then full body interactions are similar to the gestures and postures, except they, involve the entire body. So you're like jumping up in the air, or doing some kind of emote like crying or whatnot. And so again, these are typically going to be something that have already been pre-programmed in, or they should have some kind of template in there of like, this is what, when the user does this, that means they're jumping up in the air, that kind of thing.
Hello.
So I'm going to play you a demo of a VR game called Survive the Wild. Unfortunately, they actually went out of business, so you can't actually play this anymore, but this was definitely the best example out there of a VR game because it was multiplayer and whatnot. So these audio files are really useful and they're published as part of this paper and in a permanent archive. But I'm going to show you, there's a lot in this particular demo. Basically, all the different examples that I just showed are in this one particular demo. So listen very carefully, and you'll be able to identify a lot of them.
Hello, this is Sam. This is just a very small demo of a few of the various nonverbal social interactions that can take place on Survive the Wild. For simple ease of coordination, I'm going to be performing most of this on my own character. However, if somebody were to be around me performing these actions, I would hear them positioned using the 3D audio system. In Survive the Wild, a character can very quickly sit, or stand, or clap, or snap, or jump, or walk around. And again, if I was a listener, I would be able to hear other characters walking around positioned in 3D. Those various sounds you're hearing, like the occasional breathing sound and the chip eating sound, are just stat indicators that you can ignore. There's also several nonverbal socials you can perform in Survive the Wild. You can pull up a menu and select a social that you want to broadcast to everybody around you. For example, I can open the menu, and then I can press G twice for gasp, and then I can press enter. And then everybody around me will hear that gasping sound. And there's a bunch in this menu. Like, I can laugh. Or I can itch. Or I can rustle and stretch. Or I can yawn. Or various other random actions. If I pick up grass, which is a surface I'm currently standing on, players around me will be able to hear that. Or I have also just opened my inventory. I can then select this water bottle. I put it in my right hand. Now I can press a status key to hear what I have in my hands. Now if I select my water bottle, I'll have drawn the water bottle. And I'll be able to press another status key to hear this information for a player around me. Of course, if I open the water bottle, that has a sound which, again, everybody around me can hear. And that goes for every single item on the game. Survive the Wild also has a clothing system which people can use to express themselves a little bit. I can see what I'm wearing right now.
You are wearing some messy pants on your legs, a large soft jacket, a watch on your wrist, and an umbrella on your head.
And people could hear me wearing another clothing item. For example, if I want to wear these worn-down slip-on shoes.
You will just open the bag. Please select what you want to use. Entire inventory. Worn-down slip-on shoes. You have one. Worn-down slip-on shoes.
I just select it and put it in a hand. And as I wear it, you can hear it makes a sound that everybody around me would be able to hear. And of course, you can press a key to see what clothing those around you are wearing. And if I check this for somebody else, I will be able to see their gender as I'm checking their clothing. And I think in a very small nutshell, that's most of the major features that Survive the Wild has to offer in terms of nonverbal social interaction. Of course, if that doesn't cut it, you can also voice chat and text chat in various different channels. But there's several ways you can communicate nonverbally in Survive the Wild, and if a player is attentive, you can pick up quite a bit of information about what's going on.
So Sam was the developer of Survive the Wild, and thank you, Sam. All right, so the next area is conventional communication, and Survive the Wild also had this, like he was mentioning. Basically, these are bulletin boards or like a whiteboard with some kind of information written on it, or emails or that kind of thing. And basically, you just really just need to have these treated as a normal text file or something like that, where if the user looks at it or interacts with it, they can just up and down arrow and left and right arrow through the lines or the characters in that message. So similar to how a screen reader might be used on like a web page, for example. That's basically what would be expected here.
Down arrow.
So I'm going to show you what it's like in like an inbox, for example.
Down arrow. ACL awards Assistive Technology Alternative Financing Program grants ACL update 701 AM row 2 of 19,384 level 1, down arrow. National Preparedness Month comes to a close. ACL updates 9/29/2023, 1:48 PM row 3 of 19,384 level 1, control home. Continual Engine September newsletter on accessibility and education. Continual Engine 7:18 AM row not selected 1 of 19,384 level 1.
So basically you're up and down arrowing through the menu of messages, and then control home will get you to the top, control end will get you to the bottom, that kind of thing. So it's very standard commands that you want, and it's menus basically, to access the message, and then if you're up and down arrowing through the lines of the message, like that's a similar experience. All right, so environment appearance, how can you customize your environment is a little more complicated. And basically, this is how do you add on, say, for example, a bucket into the environment, or if you're a wizard, how do you conjure up a rabbit and put that into the environment? So here's a demo of how you would do that using another audio game that's out there called, this is actually a game maker tool. So you can make your own audio games, and this is how they allow you to create your own environment.
Objects. Please select object to place. Barrel. Building creator. Container. Building barrel. All items tab. Please select below anything you would like to add. To add more than one of a specific item, hold shift whilst selecting the item to receive a prompt where you can then enter the desired quantity. Press escape once you have finished adding items. Bucket. Bucket. 1 added. Press enter to place the created object. If you wish to size the object when you press enter, also hold down the shift key to access the Sable sizing tool to set the dimensions. Barrel. Barrel. Barrel.
So basically what I did there was I dropped the barrel, and then I walked around the barrel and then walked over the barrel again, and I could hear the barrel was placed there. So that is what you call a what you hear is what you get interface. Non-body communication is having some text written on your shirt or sign language or something like that. And similarly, it needs to be part of that description, for if there's text written on your shirt, it should be part of the description when somebody reads to you. And then sign language should have some kind of speech, attached to it or something like that, or text attached to it. But they definitely, the participants did add some experimental ideas of how you would make sign language accessible through audio, if you want to learn their thoughts on that. But nobody's actually done an accessible or an auditory only sign language experience specifically. But that's basically that particular piece.
Grinning face.
So also another piece is sometimes characters will put emojis above their head, and I guess this is a thing. I didn't know this until I was doing research for this. But here's how emojis are read with a screen reader. And the Unicodes, I think, actually are pretty standardized. And so if you just send that to the screen reader, or even just have a standardized emoji, like text message describing that emoji, this is kind of the experience like on Slack or on Teams when I want to select an emoji.
Grinning face with big eyes 2 of 81, grinning face with smiling eyes 3 of 81, beaming face with smiling eyes 4 of 81, grinning squinting face 5 of 81, grinning face with sweat 6 of 81, face with tears of joy 7 of 81, rolling on the floor laughing 8 of 81.
So it basically just gives you really short description of what that emoji is. I have no idea what rolling on the floor laughing is. I'm guessing it's somebody rolling on the floor laughing, but I can't tell you anything else about that. All right, so the participants wanted to really emphasize that it's super important to always have access with a screen reader on the interface. So oftentimes systems will have some speech mechanism in there, but like you heard on Survive the Wild, or like you hear me right now, I have my own synthesizer, and I really like this synthesizer. I spend more time listening to this synthesizer than I do anything else in the world. So I really like this synthesizer, and if I can use my synthesizer on the VR platform, that's really, 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 really nice. And in fact, I did a study a while back where I actually had participants using an English interface, and I said, go ahead and use whatever synthesizer you wanted. And since this was an international study, I had participants who were using their like an Italian synthesizer reading English text, and that's what they preferred. So you really don't know what the synthesizer is that a blind person wants. They really are an expert at that one particular synthesizer, and they really like that one synthesizer. So I can't emphasize it enough. Allow the blind person to change their synthesizer or use their own screen reader. And then the other thing is use the keyboard or some kind of controller. I know gestures and stuff like that are super cool. Have that, but also have the option for keyboard accessibility or adding the ability to control using some kind of controller. It's also useful for somebody who it doesn't have the correct mobility, doesn't have the mobility to do a pinch or a swipe or something in the air. Um, and I kind of call the non-visual experience the window message icon uh, pointer interface. And so, sorry, window icon menu message interface. So this is basically you've got the window that your object is on, and this is kind of the play on the WIMP interface if you've ever heard of that window icon menu pointer. So I kind of change it to window icon menu message because those speech messages that you heard are super critical. The icons are the auditory sounds that you heard, or they could also be, the descriptions of the icons that are there. And then the menus are, being able to up and down arrow through the different social interactions that you heard on Survive the Wild. And then the messages are when somebody yawns, it says John yawned, that kind of thing. So that's the window icon menu message interface that I kind of like to describe. There's a lot of future work that needs to be done here. So we proposed all these different interactions. We have examples of most of them, but we don't really have a demo in Unity or Godot or any of the Unreal Engine. We don't have any templates that are there. So that needs to be done. And a mainstream VR platform really needs to integrate some of these, especially the navigation pieces. I've been after Mozilla Hubs, for example, to add like navigation movement sounds to their platform for years, and they still haven't done it. So like we really need a VR platform that integrates most or all of these, interactions, so that we can point to that and say, this is a really great example of a VR platform. So there's a lot of opportunity there. Thank you. And actually, a lot of the people that work on audio games are also work at my company, Exo Navigation. We primarily work on digital maps, but we definitely have a lot of experience in VR. One thing that I really recommend is if you are building a VR interface, please contact some of these audio game creators. They are really expert when it comes to understanding what users want. They often have thousands of or tens of thousands of blind people that are playing their games, and they know how to like beta test with them. They've got fans that follow them. Play game developers like a Prone or Sam Tupi. These are really or Talon. These are really awesome, incredible game developers that I can put you in contact with if you want. But they are very famous in the audio game community and can basically solve any problem that you run into when it comes to the interface. So what questions do you have for me?
Awesome. Thanks, Brandon. That's a ton of amazing stuff in here. And I'm very curious now to actually go try playing some of these for myself because despite being a big gamer for years, I've never tried a pure audio game. And it sounds like I've been missing out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's thousands of them. Definitely. Audiogames.net.
Awesome. Um, so let's see. I think I know I have a few questions, but I'll start with we have one in Q&A, which is can someone bring their synthesizer to mobile?
Yes, absolutely. Uh, so right now, if you integrate with VoiceOver, that's the best way. So for example, I use the Eloquent synthesizer on my computer. I've got the exact same synthesizer on my iPhone. So I listen to this synthesizer literally more than I do anything else in the world. So like 14 hours a day, constant listening to that synthesizer. So I like that synthesizer. Uh, so yes, you can definitely bring your own synthesizers to mobile. Just and iOS and Android and also the web speech API. They all allow for selecting of synthesizers, and so just use that. Or use ARIA live regions on the web for accessing the screen reader, or use you can actually have a hook and send speech messages to the sound the voiceover on mobile. So definitely look into both of those.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I know maybe for folks in the audience that aren't familiar, could you talk about the difference between a screen reader and a synthesizer?
Yes. So a screen reader is a very complicated application that is built to give you access to all the information that's on the screen. It only works on semantic content or content that is basically something that can be automatedly tested through like where you can select the text and paste it. It's a little more technical than that, but using like the uh, iOS widget toolkit, the default iOS widgets, or something like that. So, like for example, on the home screen of the iPhone, they all those different elements on there have some, can be read by the screen reader. There's a lot of other elements that a screen reader has, like for example, if I double tap with two fingers, like that will start what's called the magic tap, and that'll send that to an application to start play or pause text. I can swipe down with with two fingers, and that'll read the text, all the text on the screen, just automatically. I can swipe left and right. So all these gestures. And that will move me line by line, or I can, decide I want to move character by character, or I can, do all kinds of different stuff that the screen reader has built in. And so if you can possibly use a screen reader, use a screen reader, because it like the people who build those like literally do that their entire life. Like they are full-time building those screen readers, and they're going to do it much better than you do, no matter how much time you spend on that, just because Apple spends a lot of money on their screen reader. So that's definitely something to think about. A synthesizer is just access to that sound of the speech that is playing through when you send a message to that speech synthesizer. So it's just the sound of the voice.
Gotcha. So when you have a screen reader, generally that comes with a synthesizer that is
Yes.
determines what the actual voice sounds like.
Yep, yep. So if you
Gotcha.
interface with a screen reader, you don't have to worry about the synthesizer at all. They're going to listen to it their own speed, and they're going to be like it's going to be in their language. It's going to be in there. You don't have to worry about any of that. You can if you want, and I think VoiceOver has some way where you can actually grab like when the synthesizer stops, like it's kind of the big thing. But otherwise, just have a space. Like the biggest thing is when you don't know when that synthesizer is going to stop talking. So oftentimes, what'll happen is a person will actually shut the synthesizer up or the screen reader up when they need to hear something else. And so you can just kind of assume that, or you can have a space bar to move on to the next message or whatever. If, say, for example, you're doing a cutscene or something like that, and you need the synthesizer, the screen reader to read some text. So that's usually what an audio game will do. It'll give you one screen, you press enter to continue, that kind of thing.
Gotcha. And just to continue on this real quick, so we've got a number of other questions that have popped up here. I know a lot of the time when we've tried to use screen readers, like I've done some very, very novice level testing of like, okay, I've got my NVDA Windows free screen reader set up. I'm trying to access something like Mozilla Hubs or a Unity application, and usually it just says like the name of the window and that's it. And like
Yeah,
it's just a total black box.
yeah.
So without getting, too into the weeds and technical, like if somebody wants to open up all of these different things and not just use like the built, the game's functioning on its own. But if you want to expose your audio game activities to your whatever your like typical synthesizer, your typical screen reader is, what's the kind of high level view of how you do that?
I don't think anybody's done it in a really good way yet. Like from a technical level, if say for example you're building a web game, if you use something like HTML in your game, that will semantically be communicated to the screen reader. You can also use, widget like actual HTML elements like headings or menus or material UI, for example, can be the menu option for accessing all those different items. So like that is inform like those are semantic um, interface elements that work really, really well with screen readers. The WebGL experience or the Canvas experiences that often Mozilla Hubs uses, for example, those just aren't inherently accessible. They literally sidestepped the entire semantic DOM and went and did their own thing, and they didn't add any accessibility into that. I think there might be some way to add accessibility to it from a technical level, but that's way too technical for me.
Right. So then,
An option that
oh,
you can
sorry, go.
do is use ARIA Live regions in the browser, for example, and that will communicate with the screen reader. It'll send messages to the screen reader. You're not going to get all the fancy stuff like being able to, have the user arrows through the messages or, uh, like um, there's a lot of gestures that you can do around in like do searching and that kind of functionality with the screen reader. You won't get any of that, but you'll at least be able to send it to the screen reader. And so there are tools on the desktop. It's called Toke, TOLK, and that's a cross-platform screen reader plugin. The web speed the web's ARIA Live regions for the web, and then also there's similar stuff on iOS as well.
Gotcha. But a lot of these are basically just going to be implementing their own systems that
To
will
some
just like read
extent,
things out loud and
yeah, I mean it's a message sender tool. So if you send a message to a screen reader, that's second best. It's better than having your own synthesizer and trying to manage your own synthesizer. So that's kind of I would put it in order of use semantic tool widgets if you can. Uh, if that's not an option, and you definitely have to use Unity, and you don't want to use any of the tools that make Unity widgets accessible with or semantic, then use a message sender tool like Toke or ARIA Live regions. And then if that doesn't work for one reason or another, which it should, but if it doesn't, then go ahead and use your own synthesizer. Just allow the user to change the synthesizer and like the speed and the rate and all that kind of stuff.
so for something like Survive the Wild, is there an option to use your own synthesizer or just to
Yes.
modify their synthesizer?
No, so it'll actually send it does send messages through the screen reader. So they do that second option there. And they end up like making their own menus and whatnot. But yeah, usually it's number two. So they will hook directly into NVDA or they will hook directly into JAWS and they'll send it using Toke or something similar where each screen reader basically has their own API for controlling it, and that's what those like Survive the Wild and A Hero's Call use.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, it starts to get very technical very quickly, but it's great to have some of this high level stuff. And I'm sure
Yeah,
folks can contact you or some of the audio game developers that you've listed for more info on that type of thing.
please do. Yeah.
Okay, so next question. It's a good one from Antonia Forster here. Says, Hi, I'm working on a location-based VR experience that combines VR with real physical objects, some of which are inputs, e.g. a box with sensors that detect being moved, and some of which are outputs, e.g. an object that vibrates. What advice would you have for a project like this? Specifically, do you think it is safe and reasonable for a blind or visually impaired user to physically navigate around a small set, think like a simplified small room with a few interactive objects, or space with audio that is guiding them?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you don't even need to guide them. You just like if they're it depends, usually what I would recommend is allow them to use their cane in that space. especially if they're moving around, and that could be part of your experience, where they're using a cane. Um, like they're going to want to be feeling that environment. But yeah, absolutely. It's something that can be done for sure. Um, I don't know a ton of VR experiences that are like that, but I would definitely recommend allowing them to use their own cane.
Gotcha. Oh, and Antonio also asked earlier if it would be possible to get a copy of your slides.
Yeah, I can send them to you, and then you can attach them if this is going to be posted anywhere on, the recording is going to be posted somewhere.
Yeah, we'll upload the recording to YouTube afterwards.
Very cool.
Okay, so next question. Unreal Engine source code is open. What audio gaming facilities exist already? And if none, can we bring the studios together to contribute to standards?
Uh, I'm not super up on Unreal Engine. I know there's been some efforts to make Godot accessible. I know Godot has actually been very open to making their platform accessible. It took several years, but I think recently they added in some uh like some semantic tooling, especially within the interface. Unreal, I don't think has been very receptive to making their platform any accessible at all. Unity has been zero contact with the blind community. So Godot is definitely the one that I would look into. If you know anybody and or would be interested in working with Unreal community, please do so. Like that we need more efforts going to saying that we want to increase our user base by at least 20%, and the only way to do that is to make the games accessible. So like that's literally the only thing keeping these 20% of players from using your platform. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always a challenge to get through to some of these big platforms. I know we've had talked
I don't
to
know why they just don't want 20% extra users. It doesn't
I
make any sense.
I
And
think
most
some of
people
the
would kill for 20% extra users. No extra marketing, no nothing. You just need to make your tool accessible and get
yeah. No, I
20% extra users.
I hear you. I think some of the challenge we've had, I know in for me trying to contact Unity, for example, is oh, we'll get in contact with this person at Unity or that person at Unity,
Yeah.
but the organization is so siloed
Yeah.
that it's just hard to make any progress without somebody from on high commanding, hey, you all need to work together on this.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which, yeah, I think we've seen, with from a few companies like Apple launching the Vision Pro with all of the iOS accessibility features baked in from day one.
Yeah.
Was
Huge.
great, but was kind of
Huge.
the exception rather than the rule, certainly.
Yeah.
We have a question here from Kane Shepherd saying, I've played two games on Steam that are audio focused that I think can be played without vision. They're called The Veil and Blind Drive. I'm curious if anyone here has played either. I have full vision, so I'm not sure if those games are actually accessible.
Definitely the Veil did a lot of marketing on audiogames.net. I've never heard of Blind Drive. There's another one that is really, really well known called Skullgirls that is on Steam that is very accessible non-visually. I'm not a Steam itself is not accessible. So it's kind of one of those things where if you really want, like you can try and kind of um, hack Steam a little bit to make it usable, but Steam itself is not accessible. So if you publish any games on Steam, you're not going to get very many blind people to play it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I never even realized that, but you're right, isn't it? Whole
The
interface.
Microsoft Xbox Store, I think, is pretty accessible. But again, I've never actually used that. But I know that they've got a lot of people in there who try and make their platform accessible. Um, but usually a blind person is going to want to download something on their Windows PC. I would say 95% of the blind gamers are Windows users, just because 99% of the games are Windows only on audiogames.net. You can
That
find iOS games, but they're very rare.
interesting. Why is it that because I know a lot of people like to use iPhones, iOS tends to have pretty robust
Oh,
accessibility
yeah, sorry.
options,
There
but
are a few games on iOS. I meant Mac.
oh,
Sorry.
or
But yeah,
Mac,
there
yeah.
are a few audio games on iOS. But you just don't have a very good interface. Like touchscreens are the worst interface for blind people just because they don't have any tangible interaction. And so like yeah, you can kind of use it, but like even Braille screen input, which is when you use your phone as a Braille keyboard, it's just really not accurate. Like you're gonna get I oftentimes am pressing, D, and it's gonna tell me I'm pressing C, which is, two fingers, but it's very annoying. It's just not a reliable interface, and so I'm just a million times faster with a keyboard than I am with using a touch screen, and most blind people would agree with that. And a lot of blind people actually just have a keyboard, Bluetooth keyboard attached to their phone rather than dealing with the touch screen, just because they don't like touch screens.
Gotcha. And I know Kane here is also asking, I remember Naughty Dog did a lot of work on the Last of Us remakes to be accessible.
Yes.
Curious if that was successful. Yeah, and I know games like apparently God of War, Guardians of the Galaxy, some of these have apparently doing a lot of work into their accessibility. So I'm curious if
And yeah, so
Mhm.
so so what they're using is a lot of the tried and true methods, like basically there's speech messages on and ear cons, that usually those games do. They're not anything innovative. Like they're not going to be a hero's call. Like a hero's call is just going to be a completely different level than something like The Last of Us Part 2. So even though Last of Us Part 2 is really great, like the type of accessibility they do is just not like it's very um like there's nothing really innovative about it. It's just like giving you access to speech. So it's very it works, but it's not anything spectacular. So um, if you want to experience an interface that's really amazing, you need to go to the audio games because they're blind people building tools for other blind people, and they know how to do it. And Naughty Dog, I think, had some blind consultants. They did amazing. Like I'm not saying anything bad about what they did, but they didn't have any really innovative experiences in there other than the fact they were a mainstream game that did a really good job, and you can totally play it non-visually. So, but like if I had to choose like the immersion experience between like The Last of Us Part 2 and A Hero's Call, I would choose A Hero's Call.
Gotcha. Okay, well, I think that is just about all the time we have today. But I want to give a huge thank you to Brandon here for coming out for giving this awesome talk. We'll definitely be putting this up on our YouTube. I also want to encourage people to come out. We've got going to have next month one more event that'll be coming up soon in early December, and then join us for Extra Access, a retrospective on December 12th before we go into hibernation at the end of the year. But for today, thanks so much, Brandon, and we'll look forward to seeing or hearing, as the case may be, a lot more of these games as time goes on.
Yeah, VR experiences. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Hmm